Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kastuba. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, everybody. Welcome to our holiday week. It's an exciting week, Kaustubha. Things are happening and moving, and I hope we're okay with the weather.
It's going to get real cold, but it's going to be okay.
It's going to be real hot, then get real cold. Now, it's no big deal for you. You hop on the subway. We're spinning around on black ice on the way home.
Take the train.
No.
Well, there's a solution for you right there.
Oh, we could take the train.
Yeah. Take the train.
It's a lot of money.
But your safety is important to us.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay, good. What's going on with you today? Getting ready for
yeah, getting ready for the extravaganza, and
we're gonna have a Super Soul extravaganza too. It's sort of unofficial, but
Christmas
locals
Eve
are coming over. Christmas Eve. I don't have my kids. That's weird on Christmas Eve.
So you've been,
last year at this time, I was losing my mind. I'm gonna go back and listen to that show, but I was in a lot of overwhelm, stress, lamentation. It's when I split my nose open. Remember?
Oh yeah.
I was lost. I was in.
Your nose got all busted up.
My nose got busted up. It was like a big number 3 on my nose.
Yeah. That healed very
It healed.
well.
Yeah, it healed really good, Raghunath. You thought it wouldn't, but it did.
The person who was sewing it up thought that it wouldn't.
The nurse looked at me and she's like, the doctor. She was the doctor. She's like, I can't do this. This is a mess. This is your face. I was like,
go to a plastic surgeon.
She was telling me to go to a plastic surgeon. I was like, I literally held her hand and said, you can do this. Sew it up. I think you can do this. Just believe in yourself. I'm here. I'll be your life coach through this. Very sweet.
Yeah, was that record plastic surgery disasters? Sound like you might have had one on your hands there.
I almost did. You know what? It's interesting how a beautiful face like this can be completely mangled in a moment.
Just in a moment. One trip.
Tripping in, landing on my mother's dresser, getting one of those pulls gashing my face.
All right. That was an interesting diversion, Raghunath.
Yeah.
But what do we
diversion? It's just talk, man. We're just friends talking.
Yeah, but we're friends talking on a particular subject.
Yeah.
So let's get to that subject.
That's the beauty of the Bhagavatam. You tie it into your life. You tie it in. The face is temporary. The face is temporary. Don't use your face as your credit card. Write that down, Mara. Don't use your face as your currency. The currency drops. Hyperinflation.
Thanks for tying that in.
That's like, I can't purchase what I used to with this face.
Okay. Mara, are there any announcements today?
Yeah, we have a Back to Recovery group meeting at noon today.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning for our Patreon members, Josh Kane is offering an asana class at 10:30.
And he's good.
He is good. People really seem to be liking that.
Great.
And then we have Nityananda Chandra is leading a new shloka group starting in January.
That's exciting.
So what do you do about that if you want to take part?
Go to wisdomofthesages.com and go to groups, and you can click on the Shloka group and email Nanda Chandra from there.
And if someone wants to donate Bhagavad Gita, a case of Bhagavad Gita, or any number,
Then they can call Malini at 1-669-289-5563. Or they can WhatsApp her or text message her.
That's the Live to Give campaign right there.
Yeah.
3 million Bhagavad Gitas.
3 million. Pretty impressive.
Well, yeah, they still have to do it, but I bet they will.
Oh, they got to do it.
Yeah. Well, we got.
You know what? Sometimes it's good to set that bar real high.
Yeah, no, but they
even if you fall short, what you distribute 2 million? Pretty good.
Real good.
Pretty good.
Yeah, real good. Okay.
Right.
You know, I thought we might. Well, you got a nugget, and it's tree related because we were talking about the trees yesterday, right?
This is tree related. Here it is. I'll tell you what hermits realize. This is from Alan Watts.
Alan Watts. Who
Want
was
to say
Alan
something
Watts?
about Alan Watts?
He was a writer, British writer. I think he wrote a lot on Buddhism, right?
Yeah.
Mhm.
I think he was a. Oh wait, Mara's got dug it up here. Alan Watts was an English writer, speaker, and self-styled philosophical entertainer. That's what I am. That's what I am.
Okay.
If he can write that about himself, why can't I?
I don't know if
Why
he wrote it
can't I
about
just create
himself.
My bio.
He probably didn't write it about himself.
Known for interpreting and popularizing Japanese, Chinese, and Indian traditions of Buddhist, Taoist, and Hindu philosophy for a Western audience.
Okay.
I could write this. Raghunath is a part-time botanist.
What does that mean?
Forager
You
of
like
plants.
occasionally water a plant? What does that mean for you?
I'm a,
Occasional botanist.
I'm a,
When he walks by trees, he can identify
He
them
breathes.
sometimes.
Sometimes.
I can sometimes identify a lot of plants.
Okay. Okay.
He's an environmentalist. I'm an environmentalist in a lot of ways, you know?
Yeah, when
about
you're
it.
not destroying it, you're supporting it one way or another.
No, well, I'm saying, you know, I've got a lot of people into animal rights
That's good.
and vegetarianism. That's good for the environment.
It is.
That I think I should get some type of credentials as an environmentalist for that. We had
Take it.
10,000s of kids in the straight edge scene becoming vegetarians. Give me
Okay.
something. Give me a ribbon. Give me a title. Just give me let me add that to my bio. He's
Go for it. Nobody's telling you not
Botanist.
to.
All right.
Okay. Alan Watts, what do you have to say?
Okay. Alan Watts said, I'll tell you what hermits realize.
Yeah.
If you go off into a far forest and get very quiet,
Yeah.
you'll come out to understand that you're connected with everything.
Everything. Read that again.
I could have came up with this.
We're gonna come on.
I'll tell you what hermits realize.
Yeah, what?
He's like insinuating that he's a hermit.
No, he's not.
Well, then how does he know it?
He may have spoken to them.
Oh, all right. That makes sense.
But it does sound like this is coming from his own experience.
Right. I'll tell you what hermits realize. If you go off into a far forest and get very, very quiet, you'll come to understand that you're connected with everything.
Do you
This
agree?
could be a very, very deep thought. It could be a guy who just went for a walk in the woods and smoked pot. You know what I mean? We've had some pretty heavy, deep thinkers. I'm not sure if I'm like, you know, I agree with it. And it is a very deep thought, but it could also come from someone who's not such a deep thinker.
I don't think it's our. I don't think what we're doing is giving them stars or anything. I think we're judging them. We're just trying to see what kind of conversation and thoughts it might stimulate.
Okay. All right. Yes.
All right. So I think this is really good. I really like this. You know,
Me too.
because normally we're feeling that our experience in this world is generally not one of connection, but it's one of disconnection. Right? We feel disconnected from one another. We feel like we're competing with one another. We feel, I saw another quote. Maybe I'll pull it up, actually. Not that it was maybe kind of profound when he said, I don't know. See, I get it right here. You know who it's from, Raghunath?
Who?
It's coming from former president.
One of the Bushes or one of the Roosevelts?
One of the Roosevelts.
Oh, what?
Yeah. Franklin Delano, to be exact. He says this. Is that the one? Oh, yeah, this is it. A nation that destroys its soil, destroys itself. Forests are the lungs of our land, purifying the air and giving fresh strength to our people.
Wasn't it Roosevelt who bought the Palisades across the river?
And preserved it?
Yeah.
It may have been him, yeah. Yeah, that's right. So that when you look over from Manhattan, you see like nice
You see
forests.
beautiful cliffs and forests.
Yeah. But here that idea, like it's interesting, right? Just this simple observation in nature that, like, in a sense, the trees are the lungs for us, right? And then we return it. Like, it goes back and forth. What we breathe in, what they breathe out. They breathe in what we breathe out.
It's quite magical. That alone is, you could just sit and think about that all day. Like, oh my God, I'm breathing what the plants are exhaling, and they're inhaling what I'm exhaling.
Yeah. And so there's an interconnectedness. And so that's a simple thing, right? But he's saying, you go off and you get really quiet. You kind of turn down all of the noise that we get caught up in life, working, making money, pursuing material desires, getting caught up in all kind of arguments and competitions and, what to speak of just other things that just are unimportant. And if you're in nature, where it's like it's a constant movement of messages of our interconnectedness, and you're quiet, you're removed from everything else, you begin to realize that this whole thing is connected. You don't get too many atheists amongst that kind of person,
No.
They're seeing, the seeds are planted, the cycles, it's all together, it's all organized, it's all put together just right, it's all connected,
It's reminds me of the time that I had all these, peacocks and ducks and chickens, and there was like a fox, and it was every day. I think we're probably doing the show during this, but it was a few years ago, and the fox every day was taking a bird, like sometimes right from under our nose, just taking it in his mouth and running. And we were chasing it. So we're setting up all these fox traps. And then I even got a gun. I felt like I have to protect these. I had a bow and arrow and a gun. It was like ridiculous watching me and Dr. Mike running around our underwear first thing in the morning. The fox! I'm chasing it with a bow and arrow. But it was killing everything. So I was like, and I don't want to kill a fox, but what am I going to do? And then I drove down the road, and the neighbor's farm has.
I've seen a fox around your neighborhood before.
Well, listen. The neighbor has all these stacks of logs, big logs, and we saw the fox, but the fox had like 7 babies. Oh. And I get it.
He's feeding the babies.
He's feeding his babies.
She's feeding the babies.
He's feeding the babies.
Baby foxes are really cute.
And baby foxes are really, really cute. I was like, okay, I don't know what to, now I'm totally confused.
What you had to do, Raghunath, is cut from your own flesh.
To feed the baby foxes.
To feed the baby foxes.
Well, it's also, one thing is you realize, like, everyone's just trying to love and survive and stay alive. Even the things you want to hate, right. they're just trying to survive. Yeah.
It's all interconnected.
Yeah.
Okay. But, that played into, the trees. We're talking about the trees. So maybe, yesterday, I mentioned at the end that Radhika Raman, or Professor Ravi Gupta, had written an essay on the Prachetas pastime, right? And he was analyzing it from an eco-theology. What do you say? From the point of view of eco-theology, right? That there's a from these spiritual texts, there's a theological or there's an ecological message in them. And so I did a little research on that. So maybe we can get into that today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Want me
Why don't
to
you go ahead and hit it? Yeah.
I'm going to hit it. Ready?
Yeah.
First time hit it's ever been used to describe, say, the pranam prayers for the Bhagavatam. Congratulations, Kastuba. That's a first in Gaudiya Vaishnava history.
On previous shows.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Hit it. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudirayat. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is our very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the Supreme Lord Narayan. unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, to Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta prayeshu badreshu nityam bhagavat sevaya bhagavati uttamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistiki. By regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart will become eradicated, and loving service to the Supreme Lord, who is praised with transcendental songs, will be established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Midatam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. My teachers are opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my obeisances at their lotus feet.
All right. Yeah, you see, Raghunath, I'm just looking for stimulus. What, like if I say, so Raghunath, why don't we start the chapter now? You may not like click in, but if I say hit it,
then I'm like, I'll hit it. 1, 2, 3. Or if you say 1, 2, 3, 4, just stage
then
dive.
You just kind of plug right in. All right. So, we were going to start a new chapter, and maybe we will today, the final chapter of the 4th canto. Right. Narada, who spoke to the parents, to the father of the Prachetas. Yeah. Now he's going to come and speak to the Prachetas, right?
Yes.
It's Raghunath over here. Raghunath. Mayor, what's he reading? What's he doing?
I just took away his cell phone.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Okay, come on. Now we got to focus, right? This is important.
I was focused, but someone signed up for the Christmas Eve extravaganza at Super Soul Farm. I'm just checking.
Okay. You ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, yeah, we were going to start a new chapter where Narada is going to come and speak to the Prachetas and wrap up the whole 4th canto. And we're going to wrap it up right by the end of the year. Right? It'll all work out again.
You're ready.
But before that, we wanted to, it is such and it's a little maybe confusing, right? These were great yogis. They were obviously incredible self-control.
Right.
Then they even get the darshan of Lord Vishnu.
Right.
They get all kind of blessings from him, Then they come out of the water, and the whole reason why they went into that meditation and everything is because they knew that like the government was going to fall into their hands, and they wanted to be. Just think about this, right? That the future governors, the future rulers, they would think, well, let me go into deep meditation for a long time so that when I come out, I'll be more deeply realized and more self-controlled.
Yeah. Imagine more politicians were like that. Yeah, I want to go into politics, but first, I'm going to become self-realized, meditate many, many hours a day for years, purify my consciousness. And if I get the blessings of Lord Vishnu, then I'll step into office.
That's great. So they did that. And then they come out of the water, but the first thing that happens is it seems that they become overcome with anger.
Yeah.
Right. And their anger is focused at the trees of all things, right? It's like, it seemed like the trees had taken over everything. There was this gap in leadership, and there was no balancing out, the resources, and the trees were just like everywhere. And they saw this as a problem, as a, there's got to be land to grow crops and so on. And so they reacted with anger towards the trees. And here again, we may be speaking about like the divinity in the trees, the goddess of the trees, let's say, right? Yeah.
Yes, I nodded,
okay.
But yes, okay. I should just, because a lot of people can't see the nod. Yes,
that's right. That's
right.
You're right. And so they start to burn down all the trees, and they're just with a wild abandon, And so here in this chapter that we just read, Lord Brahma comes down. And we touched yesterday on the fact that also Soma, the god of the moon, came down. Both of them began to counsel the Prachetas. Okay. So now let's check out Ravi Gupta's article. All right.
Okay. Before we read, let's go to the article.
Yeah, let's go to the article.
Okay.
So this article explores the ways in which Vaishnava commentators have interpreted this episode.
Who did he write this for again?
He just wrote it. I mean, it was probably published in, I could find out.
Academic journal.
Yeah, some academic journal.
It's okay. Go on.
And so he's saying it's exploring the ways in which Vaishnava commentators have interpreted this episode as they attempt to negotiate the question, who has priority, humans or nature?
Good question, huh?
Who has priority? Do humans come first and nature comes second? Or are we just like intruders?
Yeah, it's like who comes first, the chicken and the ducks, or the foxes?
Yeah, right.
Okay. Yeah.
Now he says that this story is significant for 3 reasons. One is that instead of simply venerating nature, which you might find like commonly, in spiritual texts, the story demonstrates the challenge of balancing human needs with the needs of other life forms. Okay, so it's recognizing both humans and nature. And 2, it accords agency to the earth by giving the forest a voice within the narrative. All right, so like these aren't just things.
Mm-hmm.
The earth speaks, the trees speak. And then 3, it bridges the boundary between human beings and the natural world by building kinship relationships between them. And to me, this is the essence of the whole thing right here, right? It's that they have a kinship, humans and nature working together. Okay, everything's connected, as Alan Watts saw. Right. I need something. It's like, are you talking to me today? What's going on?
I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't going to kill that fox. I was just going to scare it.
If that's on your mind, you can share that. Share whatever you need to share.
It was on my mind. I was having turbo scenarios about me chasing that fox.
Okay.
And I was thinking, I bet everyone thought I was just going to kill the fox. I was not going to kill the fox. I was just going to shoot my shotgun in the air and scare it.
Then why'd you bring the bow and arrow?
That too. I was chasing it with both a gun and a bow and arrow.
All right.
Okay, go on. Sorry.
So now he's going to say that a point is made throughout the Bhagavatam, not even just in this one passage, but throughout it. And this is a really important point. This is something that we don't necessarily hear from our politicians, but that dharmic leadership brings about the earth's flourishing.
Huh.
Okay. And that's interesting. And I suppose it can be in 2 ways, right? Like it can be, one way is that like the leaders do things to preserve the earth. But 2, is that just the Dharma itself, the response to dharmic life is that the earth pours forth, its resources. And he says that the earth flourishes not despite human cultivation, but because of it, even as a cow flourishes when she is domesticated. And he gives a positive example of that. And we saw that earlier in this canto with Prithu. Remember Prithu?
Yeah.
And, he was brought in after this evil king Vena.
Yeah.
And there was a chapter we read where just like he was kind of like milking the earth, it was saying, right? Like everyone's needs were being met by the earth once he protected her. And then he gave some negative examples. When cultivation turns into exploitation, then Vishnu is compelled to intervene. Right?
When cultivation turns into exploitation.
Yeah. So it's the ruler's duty to cultivate nature, to cultivate the earth. But when they simply exploit the resources, then Vishnu is compelled to intervene. He did it when he came as Varaha to recover the earth that had been exploited by Hiranyaksha. And then Prithu's father, Vena, he was misusing nature's bounty, and that prompted Vishnu to appear as Prithu, right? Okay. So this this is real significant. These are ancient texts that are drawing society's attention to the fact of what's the relationship between humans and nature, specifically in terms of leadership. What's the responsibility of leaders in terms of how they deal with the ecology, how they deal with nature? And he sees that there's patterns in the Bhagavatam's descriptions of the relationships between rulers and the earth. Okay, this is interesting. You with me, Raga?
I'm following. I'm listening.
Okay.
I'm being attentive right now.
Okay, because I thought you'd like to respond to things sometimes too.
Well, I just sort of like I'm just listening. It's good, interesting info.
Okay, so there's patterns in the Bhagavatam's descriptions of the relationships between rulers and the earth. The first pattern is this. It's the dharmic king and the earth working together as a cooperative couple to provide abundantly for human beings and animals. That's a beautiful
permaculture.
pattern.
It's permaculture here.
And then
It's what's the word? Not tending the earth.
stewardship.
Symbiotic
Stewardship.
stewardship. It's not the words I was looking for, guys. It's
Interdependence.
interdependence, symbiosis. There's something else. Yeah, I like steward.
Okay. You
Okay.
just choose whichever one you like.
Yeah, but the idea is that there's nature, and all I have to do is how do I assist it to work together? You
Yeah.
know, it's like these people
Yeah.
who can reforest deserts. It's just using nature and just positively manipulating it so everything thrives.
Right.
Then there comes a point, you know, like in say in farming with monocropping and pesticides, where you're getting that yield, but everything's suffering. So that's what you were saying earlier about the exploitation.
Well, yeah, I suppose that's a modern type of exploitation. So many, you know, where we're just like mining the earth like crazy, or we're just cutting down the trees like crazy, or, you know, there's so many different things we're doing. Okay, so again, here's some patterns. One pattern is the dharmic king and the earth working together, and then there's all this abundancy is there. And then the second is the negative, the converse of that, non-dharmic king selfishly exploiting the earth so that the earth could no longer provide for her offspring. And he makes this point. It's an interesting one. He says, neither of these narratives allow for a third possibility, namely that the dharmic king who wants to provide for his subjects but finds that the earth cannot provide enough to satisfy their needs. Right? He says the Bhagavatam seems to be making the theological statement: a shortage of natural resources always indicates a lack of dharmic leadership and the result of uncontrolled exploitation of the earth, since by definition the earth has enough for her children. Right? Because sometimes I think in modern days we look and we say, oh, there's just not enough resources.
Right. There's not enough land. There's not enough. Right.
But it's just, no, it's just that we're not living a dharmic life. If we're living a dharmic life, the earth has plenty, way, way more than enough. Okay.
You ever fly over America? There's a lot of land.
Tons of it.
Tons of land.
No people down there.
I know. They need more people. We need more people.
But what you got, like, is tons of, like, you know, and a lot of that is, you like, even when you're seeing farmland, it's like, well, they're growing crops to feed to animals so that we could eat the animals.
Right.
But it's like, but mathematically, it's just a really weak, you know, and even that stuff gets subsidized by the government. You know? It's just like this absurd kind of equation that we've created just because we want to live an undharmic life. Just because we've, and this is going to come up here, just because we've dehumanized, or not dehumanized, but depersonalized the animals. Just because of that, we get into this crazy equation, right? Where we're using up all the land to grow really unhealthy
cow corn.
Yeah, cow corn or
cow corn,
soy, or different things that are really not healthy. Then we stuff the animals full of them. You give them the most horrible, torturous life, and then kill them at a really, you know, just, I don't want to speak inhumanely in the sense that, like, just see them as like a commodity, but just from the level of commodities, just a really, you know, weak use of land and resources to get the amount of nutrition out of the animal, out of the land.
No one likes to be treated like a commodity, like a thing.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's the beginning of all hell breaking loose.
Right. Okay. So he says we might make do with this binary. A third possibility while we might make do with this binary, that you either have dharmic or undharmic kings. You know, dharmic means there's plenty, adharmic means there's lack. He says we might make do with this binary, except a third possibility does emerge in a short and little-known narrative in the 4th book of the Bhagavatam, namely the story of the Prachetas. Okay, so that's what we're talking about here. In this story, the rulers, collectively the Prachetas, are neither corrupt like Vena, nor are they like perfect avatars like Prithu. Rather, they are distinctly human kings. With every good intention, they attempt to provide for their subjects, but veer precipitously close to damaging the earth, only to be held back by good counsel. Interesting. Right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So they were yogis. They were good-intentioned yogis, but they were making a mistake, and then they heard good counsel. Right. So he continues. He says, Now he writes a bit about the agency and voice of nature that's given in this story. He says, indeed, the story of the Prachetas is significant not only for the way it frames the environmental problem, but also for the type of solution it offers. Here, the earth is not treated simply as an object of veneration, nor is it depicted merely as a passive target of exploitation. Rather, the earth, and particularly its trees, are given agency and voice in the narrative as persons who display intelligence, negotiate their needs, and struggle for their survival. Now he's going to quote David Haberman, Bhakti yogi, but also professor. I think he's at Northwestern University.
Did we meet him in India?
I met him at the Bhakti Center. I'm not sure if I met him in
What's
India
his
before I may have.
devotee name?
David Haberman. What is it again? It's slipping my mind right now.
Google that.
Can't remember. Google that.
Google that, Mara.
Okay, so
Google
as David Haberman has shown in his book People Trees, he wrote a book called People Trees.
Huh.
The acknowledgement of personal agency, autonomy, and intelligence in trees is a widespread facet of Hindu traditions from Puranic times to the present.
Hmm.
And then he says the Bhagavatam's assertion of personhood for trees aligns well with its Samkhya theology, wherein material nature, or prakriti, is regarded as active, dynamic, and adaptive matter that is animated by numerous individual purushas, right? So a tree is a body
being.
of prakriti lit up by,
Right.
a purusha, by a spark.
person.
A person is in that tree, yeah. Indeed, it is its discussion of the creative process in Book 3. The Bhagavatam lists trees as the first creation of Brahma and immediately accords them both consciousness and feeling. Although trees are, it uses the word tamapraya, they're mostly in darkness, right? Their consciousness is duller in that form. Let's say that form limits the full expression of their consciousness. Yet they, it says they are uchrotashaha. They seek life upward, and antaparshaha, they have feeling within, right? The trees, they feel. So Haberman argues that the common sense divide between, this is really good. You ready for this, Ragnar?
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to examine our own attitudes, right?
Yep.
He says, Haberman argues that the quote unquote common sense divide between humans and non-humans that is characteristic of post-Enlightenment Western cultures makes little sense in the context of widespread Hindu tree worship, where the question, who is a tree, is far more appropriate than what is a tree.
Interesting, huh?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we see it this is one of those things that made the most sense to me when I first got into Bhakti. It's like everybody's a driver and they're driving different vehicles. You drive
And
an
you switch.
18-wheeler, you drive it, right? You rent an 18-wheeler, you rent a Sprinter, you rent a Porsche, all have different facility. You can carry more with one, you can go faster in another. Sometimes you drive a helicopter, and sometimes, you drive a bicycle. But the drivers are pretty similar. They're unique and pretty similar, but they're limited to what their vehicle can do. A tree is limited. You can't play volleyball. I've tried. Can't play volleyball with a tree, but it can give shade. It can live a couple hundred years. And it's trapped by that vehicle in the same sense. It's free within that vehicle to do what it does. In the same sense, we're trapped. We're the jiva bound by this vehicle. And I guess, and what they say is in this human vehicle, we have an opportunity to transcend the vehicle.
Yeah, that's the unique. That's part of what's unique about this form, right?
Yeah,
is that it grants you that opportunity. Yeah, just they say that what the sages say is that there are these 6 symptoms of life, right? 6 symptoms of the presence of the Atma, of the spark of spirit, where you see birth, growth, reproduction, and then maturing, coming of age, and then ultimately disease or dwindling, reproduction, dwindling, disease and death, where you see those, birth, growth, maturity, reproduction, disease or dwindling and ultimately death. That means it's the Atma, it's a spark of spirit, it's a spark of Purusha that whose presence makes matter operate through those through that progression, right? So where do we see it? We see humans are born, they grow, they reproduce, et cetera, et cetera. We see animals do the same, and we see that plants also do the same. And so, this is what I like about Alan Watts's thing, right? That idea, you see, well, let's take that idea just one step further, okay, Ragana?
Yep.
Is someone might say, okay, I get it. It seems like there's this non-material element that makes things, be born and grow and so on, and ultimately die. Someone might say, I accept this theory. It seems to make a whole lot of sense, this theory. It seems at least reasonable, right? Worth engaging with this theory that it's a different type of energy. Life is a different type of energy, and it animates matter. So where you see these progressions take place, there must be a spark of life that's different from matter. But what the sages say is that this takes it one step further, is that it's not that the spark of life in the plant is any different in any way at all from the spark of life in the human or the spark of life in the animal. It's not that there's dog soul, human soul, tree soul, and they're all different. It's the souls are the same nature, and the same soul is moving through all these different forms and experiencing them all, right?
See, that's what my mom said. My mom said dogs will go to dog heaven.
Yeah, see, that's right. That's what I'm saying. It's taking it one step further.
Like some crazy kennel in the sky. But the idea is that we are all, and that's a hard thing to swallow, that Kostuba, whom we love, is no different in essence than a rhododendron bush.
Same
You
thing.
know what I mean? A blade of grass, a redwood tree, or a goat. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just a different
Slug.
vehicle.
Yeah.
And we give rights, and we give rights, and you have parameters in how you can behave, etc., and we'll protect you and stuff like that. But everything else is up for grabs. I mean, we're good with pets. If you got a pet, you can't start killing dogs around here. You get in trouble. But you can hunt coyotes. What kind of what's going on with our brains? You can hunt wolves or coyotes. Maybe not if they're endangered, but I think they can hunt coyotes. I think people hunt coyotes. So where is the line that's separating being from commodity or being from thing? And the Vedas say there is none.
Well, that boundary, hear this. This is from Haberman, okay? He says, such concepts of animism and anthropomorphism are implicated in a modern Western cultural construction of nature that sets a firm boundary, like you were just saying about where do you draw the line, right? The Western cultural construction of nature sets a firm boundary between the human and the non-human. These are completely different categories.
Yep.
Right? The cultural construction of nature in Indian society has resulted in a much greater continuity between the human and non-human, which are both regarded as parts of the same whole. We're all spirit moving through different material forms. There's no difference between us. Even though you can't speak to me like another human, I recognize you, Mr. Tree, as just like me. Right? You may have limitations in the form that you're in that I'm not bound by at this time, but I have been bound by that way in the past, and in the future you won't be. Right? In the future I may be again. That's called spiritual consciousness right there. That right there, And so part of that is what Haberman is saying here is that idea, that understanding is generated through reading these sacred texts. When you have a nation that's been reading these texts for centuries and centuries and centuries, it becomes ingrained. Now there's a whole wave of Western thought that's taken incredibly firm root in India, but it's still there. It's still there.
Sure. Okay. And other cultures and different cultures will have different standards of what normal is. Not only do we think it's a commodity, but we will bullfight. We'll actually torture the bull to get it angry enough that we will, you know what I mean? So depending on your culture, your community, etc., how enlightened or degraded the consciousness is, you'll start treating beings as beings, and less as commodities. And
Yeah.
that's when we start to find the metric of what good and bad is. Is there a good and bad? In the Sanatana Dharma, we say, yes, there is. That which is keeping you in bondage, unenlightening, rooted to your body as yourself, that's not good.
Right.
In the big scheme of things, that which is helping you see spirit in every living being, helping you become free from your body, being more equiposed, being tolerant, being nonviolent. These things are good. They lead you towards enlightenment. There is a good and a bad.
There you go. And so now what he's going to say is that now, based on what we just spoke about, the Bhagavatam is going to say, it's going to say, how do these two work together? Man and nature, man and trees, right? He says, in the case of the Prachetas, their wife is the trees. They actually marry, they join together through intermarriage, right?
We've arranged a marriage here on Wisdom of the Sages. David Charles Wilson, you are going to marry this silver maple tree.
Congrats, he's down.
I was hoping for a woman. I'm sorry.
It's a woman
Didn't
tree.
come up. I did your chart. I did the trees chart. You're very compatible.
Okay. So he writes, in the case of the Prachetas, their wife is the tree's adopted daughter, a young woman born from the union of the sage Kundu and the heavenly nymph from Locha, but then abandoned by them and raised by trees. Nevertheless, the text makes it clear that the trees regard her as their daughter. The Bhagavatam here bridges the boundary between human beings and the natural world through one of the most effective means of boundary blurring, the Indic tradition, in Indic traditions, and that is intermarriage, right? Like he's shown that for centuries this goes on, right? That two families that might compete with each other and harm one another, through intermarriage become allies.
Mm-hmm.
And he's saying here that the rulers on one end and nature on the other end, or you could say humans led by rulers on one end and nature on the other end, this is shown that they should become allies through intermarriage, through an intimate connection, right? They should become allies. So he goes, interestingly, none of the commentators, he's studied the commentators on this Prachetas pastime. None of the commentators finds need to justify the agency ascribed to the trees in this story, particularly their ability to perform kanyadana, the ultimate act of giving, thus reinforcing the notion that the personhood of trees is common sense and commonplace in Hinduism, resulting in the cultivation of personal relationships with particular trees. None of them had to try to argue and how this is reasonable. Everyone just accepted this is reasonable.
Right.
And he says, as Nagarjuna puts it, one of the commentators, in general, the ritual of arranged marriages in India is used to cement the bonds between separate families. Establishing relationships with the natural world is as important for the family's survival as the marriage between humans. In other words, we need to intermarry with the trees, like all of us.
All right. Okay. You hear that, people?
Yeah.
We're trying to marry 3 million trees.
Okay.
It's called the live
live for intermarriage, live for arranged marriage. So he says here, the situation is the inverse of contemporary Indian tree marriage. Oh, we were talking about that yesterday, right? Tree marriage.
My wife is very quiet.
Huh?
My wife is very quiet.
Oh, the tree.
She doesn't ask but much, but she doesn't do much either. Oh, she gives some shade and fruit occasionally, seasonally.
So he earlier he had written about this that you mentioned yesterday, and that Aditi mentioned, 2 years ago on our show, right? This concept, yes. But apparently there's this Hindu tradition where there's some pre-marriage to a tree before, which was done to kind of
offset inauspicious energies. Exactly.
Put them on the tree, which has incredible ability to tolerate and absorb that, and free yourself up to marry a human.
Yeah.
So here it's saying no. He says here the situation is the inverse of the contemporary Indian tree marriage. By marrying into the family of trees, the Prachetas essentially create a bond with them that guarantees the tree's future survival. While logic and good arguments may or may not have provided sufficient protection from the Prachetas' fury, entering into bonds of kinship gave the trees a greater degree of reassurance. Interesting, right? In other words, like there may be two families and they say, let's get along with each other, but you never trust each other and you never, you worry all the time if that piece is going to hold.
Mm.
But once you have that intermarriage, it's like it kind of solidifies the allyship. What are you laughing about?
Stuba, do you take this shagbark hickory?
I do. Shag. Now you're dropping your botany.
Little botany bombs on you.
Okay. So now to wrap it up, he draws two lessons from this pastime. Okay.
Okay.
So if you are all wondering why are we reading this,
Why are we reading? What's the lesson here?
Okay, so
Academia?
first one is the recognizing that trees are people too. He says
they are.
He says, therein lies the most valuable theological resource, short narrative. The Prachetas emerge from their meditation to see the earth's surface covered by trees, and their inability, and here, get this, Roger, and their initially depersonalized view of the trees.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking about this yesterday, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their initially depersonalized view of the trees allows them to scapegoat the trees for their own absence of kings. Right. In other words, it was only because there wasn't a king kind of like keeping the balance that the trees took over everything. They came up, they're angry at the trees. They don't see them as people and they just start to wipe them out. The Prachetas' angers knew no bounds until Brahma forces them to recognize the trees' agency, autonomy, and sentience. Indeed, their personhood. This recognition of the tree's personhood is secured and deepened through personal relationship, in this case, marriage, thus making the trees sajatiya, part of the same kinship networks as human beings. There's something profound here, even though it may sound fantastically entertaining to you, Raghunath. It is
profound. I mean, and the way we call like we're, when was the Enlightenment? There's a period in time. The Enlightenment. Mm-hmm. When was that? Mara. What the hell are you doing, Mara?
There was a period after the
Dark Ages, the Enlightenment. You know what? We need a new Enlightenment.
1685 to 1815.
Okay, we need a new Enlightenment. We weren't so enlightened back then.
The real Enlightenment.
Are you kidding? Yeah. There was plagues. There was bullfighting, fox hunting when everyone gets a horse and chases foxes.
Yeah.
But so enlightened.
But you put the two things together. One is that we require each other to survive. In one sense, nature doesn't require so much. It requires our protection from ourselves, really, right? But there needs to be enlightened leadership to protect nature from other humans,
mm-hmm.
and humans need nature as well. It's so it is a symbiotic relationship in that sense. Mm. And so let's marry each other, right? Let's see each other. Let's see nature as a person. Let's, just like we were talking about the trees that were cut down behind my apartment.
Yeah.
And, you really do feel something like a kind of loss that's almost like losing a close friend. We need to see nature that way. Our problem is that there will be people who are blind to that and see nature just as a resource to make money from. Right. And that not only threatens nature, threatens us. And so we need to marry each other, right? We need to strengthen that bond, strengthen that personal relationship through a kinship that's formalized in a sense. And then, yeah, go ahead, please.
I took the kids to the Jersey Shore one year when my daughter, who's 17, was probably 10, and maybe 11 or 12 or something like that. And, typical Jersey Shore scene, the summer was very nice. And then all of a sudden, there was some guy fishing. You don't really notice him until he catches some massive fish. And
it's struggling.
And my daughter loses her mind. Wow. First of all, it's like a fight. A fight is going like a dramatic fight with a big fish, bigger than he could probably even handle. And crowds are gathering around, watching him and cheering him. And my daughter was like, no. And she would walk where the line was. And everybody was yelling at her, like, get out of there, get out of there. And
she just try to cut the line.
She was trying to I don't know what she was doing, but she was doing a personal protest, and it was pissing everybody off. And I was like, you go, girl, you go. But it's sort of awkward because I'm going to have to fight somebody now. That's where I was at.
Right.
And it's going to be a scene because everyone was yelling at her. But I could see she was deeply hurt by growing up with the simple truth, like, you can't just do
Animals
this.
are people too.
This is a crime. This is actually a crime. Why isn't anybody else saying this? Why are people cheering for this, brutality?
Right.
Mm.
Yeah. We get desensitized.
You get desensitized.
What was the word he used?
How did that resolve? I think the fish ended up breaking the line, but it was like an hour struggle with this fish.
Okay. Here's the second lesson, Raghunath. The first one had to do with the personalization, recognizing the personhood of nature. And the second had to do with the duty of the responsible leader. Okay. The second theological lesson of the Pracheta story lies in its recognition and insistence that responsible leadership plays a central role in averting ecological crises. The Prachetas certainly started out with good intentions, as they reflected in their desire to prepare for kingship through long meditation and by creating space for their subjects to flourish. More important than those good intentions, however, was their willingness to listen to good counsel, even in a moment of anger, and even when the advice went against their initial plans to support their subjects. Indeed, by bringing to light some crucial building blocks of Vaishnava eco-theology, the Pracheta story provides us with a starkly honest perspective on human beings' potential for ecological destruction, while also offering hope and direction for transformed relationship with the natural world. Why are you laughing at me right now? Huh?
It's a good point of the Bhagavatam.
What?
It's a good part of the Bhagavatam.
It is. That all you got to say?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, maybe we could end with just going back. I thought you were going to share something profound, but you're totally distracted and reading something else.
Mara's got the giggles. It's making it awkward.
So we can read this we read yesterday, but I'll read this one last verse. This is spoken by Soma, spoken to the Prachetas, and he says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is situated as the super soul within the cores of the hearts of all living entities, whether moving or non-moving, including men, birds, animals, trees, and indeed all living entities. Therefore, you should consider every body a residence or temple of the Lord. By such vision, you will satisfy the Lord. Boom.
Boom. Beautiful. Right. Takeaways, Miss Mara. Miss Mara.
The face is temporary.
The face is temporary. There was more to that, wasn't there?
Don't use your face as your currency.
Don't use your face as your currency there.
Connection, not competition.
Okay.
Oh, nice.
All right.
That's a mug.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Forests are the lungs of the land. Roosevelt.
Okay.
Meditate and seek blessings of Vishnu before you run for office.
Yeah, for sure.
Definitely.
Dharmic leadership brings Earth's flourishing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. All right.
When exploitation replaces cultivation, Vishnu appears.
He does.
We can transcend the human vehicle.
Let's do it.
Better when I turn these into songs.
No, it's not.
We can transcend the human vehicle.
That was pretty good. You made it through like 6 without making
Yeah,
it.
that was great.
You're very well behaved on the first few. There's no line separating animals and commodity.
There's no line. Go on.
You can't play volleyball with a tree.
You can try. They're no fun.
Yeah, there was that. What was that game? Tetherball or something though?
Yeah, tetherball.
Yeah.
Got that. We
Play
got
that with a tree.
Yeah,
It's sort of like a tree game. Yeah. The tree won again.
And marry a tree.
Marry a tree. Why not?
Today.
These are people too. Lonely. Looking for a spouse that doesn't talk too much. Doesn't
I got a
do-
great tree for you.
Ask for
Doesn't
much.
ask for much. Not so needy.
Wait till you meet my tree in my backyard. She's beautiful.
Wait till you meet my meet her family.
All
This is
right.
her mother. Our tree's having a baby. We're having a baby.
We're having a million little acorn babies.
A million little acorn babies.